present, Mr Chair.
Sorry, I'm going to call Reno Tarakatni.
Thank you, Mr Chair. It's a pleasure to take a call on the Building Earthquake-Prone Buildings Amendment Bill, my first call, and as a member represented with my constituency in the Canterbury region, I know how very important this piece of legislation is, and can I acknowledge all of the work that's been undertaken by the committee and all the work prior that has led up to this piece of legislation, sir. Sir, with this legislation, we're dealing with buildings, we're dealing about earthquake-prone building assessments and the like, and it's a very lifeless, it's very sort of, we're dealing with inanimate objects. They talk about structures and buildings and the like, and I just really wanted to add another dimension to the building, sir, because if we look at the Christchurch earthquakes, and in particular the roles that the marae's played in the immediate aftermath of the big earthquake, especially in February 2011, the marae's in Christchurch especially were a focal point, were a refuge, were a rallying point for the whole community, where a lot of emergency services were based out of the marae's. And two in particular that come to mind is Rehua Marae, right there in the heart of Christchurch, and also Ngā Hue Whā out in the east. And so those marae withstood all the full force of the ru, of the earthquake, sir, and not only that, they withstood the earthquakes and they provided a valuable service to the communities, and they're still doing so. And so it's the reference to buildings. In Te Ao Māori, a whare nui is more than just a building. It is representative of our tūpuna. If we look at all the various parts of a marae, they are the parts of the body of our tūpuna. And so, sir, there is more than just a bare-boned, inanimate type object that we're referring to in this legislation. And I think that's what this legislation fails to do. It fails to address the extra spiritual meaning that is applied to buildings. And every building, I suppose, they have a blessing to open a building and the like. So, you know, no matter what culture you're from, that is a very important part of the life force, of the mauri of the house. And when we look at whare nuis in particular, and all the respective parts and the corridors and every part of the whare nui has a story, signifies a tūpuna, an ancestor. It's all very, very important. Likewise, if we look around this House of Parliament, sir, it is this is a war memorial. This house obviously is representative of the supreme lawmaking body of the land, and it has its own history and tikanga in itself. So what I'm saying, sir, is that that dimension of buildings is not captured within this piece of legislation. And as an example, sir, I mentioned about the role that the marae's played, so much so that Civil Defence reached out to the marae's post the earthquakes and said, what a remarkable job you've done. We want to include you in our emergency management plans. Now, that's all well and good, but sir, there's always the quid pro quo is what extra additional responsibilities, what extra cost will that impose on the proprietors of the marae? And so when I look at so if we take all that background and we look at the critical section, sir, where the Select Committee has created some exclusions to which the earthquakes assessments, prone assessments will apply. If we look at all the buildings that have been excluded, obviously there are residential buildings. But sir, there's an exclusion for farm buildings and farm sheds. Well, you know, arguably, sir, we could also include wharenui. We could include marae, if it's Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair.
Reno Turcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Good points being
This is a very important point I'm making.
It's taken a long time to get there.
It's going to be good. So, sir,
now.
see, we're experiencing the life force of this House right now. So, sir, as I was saying, why has, you know, a farm building or a shed that is located on a farm used primarily for farming activities that, or even an ancillary purpose, has been excluded from this part? Well, why wouldn't a wharenui, a marae, and its ancillary buildings should be excluded within that part? Because that does impose additional obligations, additional cost, additional burden on the proprietors of every marae up and down the country. And as we know, it's not cheap running a marae these days. It's not very cheap. It's not cheap at all. There's a lot of mouths to feed in each tribe. A lot of mouths to feed. So, sir, in all seriousness, I believe that consideration should be given to marae, to wharenui, in all building legislation, to encompass the more than just the two-dimensional aspect to it, but the extra dimensions that I've mentioned, and also to give consideration for their exclusion from having to go through the earthquake-prone processes. If it's good enough for a farm building, an ancillary purpose farm building, then surely it should be good enough for marae, particularly when those marae have withstood the most powerful earthquakes that this country has faced in recent times, and have served a very important purpose in looking after the needs of not only the whānau but the wider community. Thank you, sir.
I call Ron Mark.
Thank you, Mr.